Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC, and today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Biblical proof, part 1. Again, Israel, today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Biblical proof, part 1. Okay, Israel, so get out a pen and notepad for this particular series on this particular lesson, because this is going to be a good lesson to discuss about this subject matter of Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Biblical proof of understanding. Okay, so let's get started, Israel. We're going to first establish on what Yahweh biblical description of his appearance looks like, okay, based upon the understanding. So we have to establish the appearance of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of understanding, to let the Hebrew Israelites know that their God, the Most High Yah, is a so-called black man. Okay, let's get into it. Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. So again, this is the prophet Daniel, who was a Hebrew Israelite, and he had a vision of the Most High sitting on his throne in the heavenly realm, in his understanding. So we're going to go to the book of Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. It reads, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. You see this, Israel? So it says this again. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. So again, Daniel the prophet, who was a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Judah, right? Daniel the prophet observed all the Gentile nations being thrown down from rulership in this understanding, because all the Gentile nations' kingdoms are on borrowed time. In this understanding, because all the Gentile nations' empire of rulership of the earth only occurred for a period of time in the earth, in his understanding. That's why he says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. So he witnessed the destruction of those superpowers that ruled the earth by the Gentile nations, right? That's the understanding. And the Ancient of Days did sit. So now Daniel the prophet is observing the Most High Yah, right? He is observing the Most High Yah sitting on the throne. In order for a person to sit on a throne or sit down in a chair, a person must have a body. So as you can see, Daniel the prophet seeing the Most High Yah, who is basically being referred to as being the Ancient of Days, sitting on a throne in the heavenly realm, whose garment was white as snow. So now Daniel the prophet is witnessing the Most High Yah having clothing on, wearing white apparel, wearing a white garment. Okay, so Daniel the prophet is observing the Most High Yah sitting on a throne with clothing on. As you can see, this understanding. So Yahweh Almighty has a body. Yahweh Almighty wears clothes. As you can see, this understanding. And the hair of his head like the pure wool. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So now Daniel the prophet is establishing that the Most High Yah, who sits on the throne in the heavenly realm, wears clothing. And also Daniel the prophet observed the Most High Yah having hair on his head, just like the appearance of having pure wool. So as you can see, woolly textured hair is hair described for the so-called black man, right? So it's establishing that Yahweh is a black man, having hair like wool, right? Also wearing a white garment at this particular description, of him sitting on the throne in the heavenly realm. So Daniel the prophet observed a black God, right, who is Yahweh, sitting on the throne in the heavenly realm. As you can see, this understanding, because pure wool is going into like sheep's hair, right? Sheep don't have straight hair. The sheep has woolly textured hair, right? So the people that have woolly textured hair are so-called black people, right? This is the understanding. People of melanated skin have woolly textured hair. As you can see, this understanding. So as you can see, the Bible does not describe Yahweh as being a white man. So Christianity is a lie, as you can see. And it says this in the understanding. His throne was like the fiery flame. So when it says his throne was like the fiery flame, that's going to the understanding that Yahweh's throne pushed off a lot of lighting effects around the throne. That's what it's getting into. And his wheels as a burning fire. Where it says, and his wheels as a burning fire, that's talking about Yahweh's chariots, right? Yahweh's chariots is symbolic for this understanding when it gets into these wheels. Okay, it said, and his wheels as burning fire, because the chariots of the Most High push off a lot of lighting effect around the chariots or those spaceships. Okay, because the chariots of the Most High are those spaceships that push off a lot of lighting effect. That's why Daniel the prophet observed this understanding as saying those chariots have the appearance of being like wheels as burning fire. That's the understanding. So as you can see, we're going to prove that where it says his wheels is getting into the chariots of the Most High. We're going to prove this understanding. So this is the book of Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 4, where we have the prophet Ezekiel, who at one point in time observed the chariots of the Most High being those spaceships. Okay, so Ezekiel the prophet observed the chariots of the Most High pushing off a lot of lighting effect around the ship, okay, which is going to the spaceship of understanding. So Yahweh has vehicles that he has with the holy angels inside those vehicles. As you can see, the understanding, Yahweh has technology as well, and his technology are those chariots, okay, which are basically getting into those spaceships with black holy angels inside those spaceships. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 4. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. So we're just elaborating that where it says this whirlwind is getting into the chariots of the Most High, because Ezekiel the prophet is observing appearance of a chariot spinning, which is basically the bottom of the chariot. It appears that it was spinning. Okay, it says a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. So Ezekiel the prophet observed the chariot of the Most High, which is basically the spaceship pushing off a lot of lighting effect, similar like appearance of a fire of understanding, just like how Daniel the prophet observed the chariots of the Most High exemplifying a fire or a certain lighting effect, similar to as saying as burning fire. but it's really talking about a lot of lighting effect around the ship, just like how Ezekiel the prophet observed brightness around the spaceship or the chariot, because the chariots are powerful. And also in Isaiah chapter 66 verse 15, Isaiah the prophet observed in the vision of Yahshua the Mashiach coming back with the chariots of the Most High to bring judgment to the earth. And also Isaiah the prophet is observing the chariots of the Most High pushing off a lot of lighting effect around the spaceship. Isaiah chapter 66 verse 15, for behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. So basically, I'm just establishing that where it says, for behold, the Lord will come with fire, that's talking about Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah. He's coming back to judge the earth by fire. Meaning, when Christ, the Black Messiah, come on the scene to the earth, he's coming to bring destruction by fire. And with his chariots like a whirlwind. See, the chariots like a whirlwind, which is getting into the understanding of those spaceships. See, chariots like a whirlwind, that's talking about the spaceships. When it says whirlwind, it's talking about the chariots or the spaceships, which we read in the book of Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 4, where it's going into a whirlwind, that's talking about the chariots, which Isaiah the prophet is elaborating that the chariots like a whirlwind. So it's establishing that Yahweh's chariots are like a whirlwind, or those spaceships like a whirlwind, because the chariots of the Most High have a spinning effect at the bottom of the ship, going in circles. That's why it's establishing like a whirlwind. Okay, so that's what I'm bringing out, this understanding about the chariots of the Most High. So as you can see, the prophet spoke in metaphor. They spoke in code. Okay, so one prophet would probably elaborate more specifically on what key words would mean. Like Isaiah said, chariots like a whirlwind, meaning the spaceships. And then you go to Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 4, he's saying a whirlwind came out of the north. So Ezekiel the prophet is talking about an actual chariot came out of the north. So that's what it's really establishing, that a spaceship or a chariot came out of the north when he used the word whirlwind. Okay, so now we go back to Daniel chapter 7 verse 9 of the establishment where it says, and his wheels as burning fire. Now we got the understanding that it's talking about Yahweh's chariots as a burning fire, or Yahweh's spaceships as burning fire. That's what it's establishing, because the chariots of the Most High in this particular vision Daniel had was surrounding the Most High near his throne. So that's what it's just establishing. Okay, so now we got understanding that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites, based upon him being described as a black man. Point blank, period. The Bible doesn't contradict itself. So as you can see, the prophets of the Most High going to speak truth, right? This is the understanding. So Daniel the prophet observed the Most High Yah sitting on his throne in the heavenly realm, right, as the appearance of being a black man. Point blank, period. There's no getting around this particular verse right here, you Hebrew Israelites, or you Gentile nations. There's no getting around this verse. This is in the Bible. So now that we got the understanding that the God of the Hebrew Israelites is a so-called black man, now we can establish the understanding of Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites biblical proof series of understanding in this part 1 lesson. So let's continue the understanding. So when we go to the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 14, which was written by the prophet Moses, right? Moses the prophet wrote the book of Exodus. He's going to establish who the God of Yahweh is for. okay, in this understanding. Okay, so we're going to elaborate this understanding in the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 14, and we're going to go to Exodus chapter 7 verse 16 to elaborate who the God of Yahweh is for. Okay, Exodus chapter 7 verse 14. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, he refuseth to let the people go. So Pharaoh, in this context in Egypt, was going into Ramses, right? Ramses, the Pharaoh, did not want to let the children of Israel go from the land of Egypt, right? So this is Yahweh having a conversation with Moses. And again, Moses was a Hebrew Israelite. Moses was a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Levi. That's the understanding. So Moses is a Hebrew Israelite having a conversation with Yahweh. As you can see, this understanding. So let's go to the next verse. Exodus chapter 7 verse 16. So this is the point where I'm establishing that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. Exodus chapter 7 verse 16. And thou shalt say unto him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews have sent me unto thee, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. So this is just establishing that Yahweh is talking to Moses to tell the Pharaoh, who was Ramses, right? To tell Ramses, the Pharaoh, that hey, that the God that sent Moses unto you is the God of the Hebrews, right? That's what Yahweh is explaining to Moses to tell Pharaoh, that the God that sent Moses to the Pharaoh is getting into Yahweh, the God of the Hebrew Israelites. That's what's being established in this conversation that Yahweh is having with Moses. Notice Yahweh didn't refer to Moses to say that he was a universal God for all nations. Yahweh is establishing that he is the God for the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. Notice Yahweh didn't say he was the God of the Christians. Notice Yahweh didn't say he was the God of the Muslims. Notice he did not say he was the God of all nations. He said he was the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. So Moses is establishing in his understanding that Yahweh is a God that deals with nationality, right? Yahweh is telling Moses that, hey, I'm the God that deals with nationality. I'm the God that deals with only the Hebrew Israelites. In this understanding, when we go to the book of Exodus, right? Yahweh is establishing that he's the God of the Hebrews. Okay, as you can see, Yahweh did not say he was the God of Allah. Yahweh didn't establish that he was the God of the Christians. Yahweh did not establish that he was the God of the Muslims. Yahweh did not establish that he was the God of all nations. He said he's the God of the Hebrews. Because religions try to take the God of this Bible, who's Yahweh, and try to merge him into these religions. Yahweh does not deal with religions. He deals with his laws, statutes, and commandments only. Point blank period. And he gave his laws and statutes and commandments to who? The children of Israel. Point blank period. So let's get to the next point of understanding. So now that we know in this particular verse in the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 16, Yahweh is establishing with Moses that he is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. So now in this point right here in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6, this is getting to the establishment that Yahweh is dealing with his holy people. Okay, he's only dealing with his holy people in this context in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6 of understanding. So we're going to read this understanding of Yahweh choosing the Hebrew Israelites over the other nations. Okay, Yahweh in this particular verse is proving to only pertain to the Hebrew Israelites. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto Yahweh thy Elohim. Yahweh thy Elohim hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Whoa, wait a minute. As you can see, people, the God of this Bible, who's Yahweh, chose the Hebrew Israelites to be above all people upon the face of the earth. So this God of the Bible is not for all nations to be equal, right? See, the religion God is equal. But the Bible God is separate, right? He wants his chosen people to be separate from the other nations that he created. He chose the Hebrew Israelites to be above all nations that are upon the face of the earth. This is what the Bible says. Because in Christianity, they're telling people that everybody is God's chosen people. Everybody is loved by God in the same way. But when we read this Bible, it doesn't say that. It's saying in this Bible that Yahweh chose a group of people who are the Hebrew Israelites to be his chosen people and chose them to be above all the nations, right, that's on the earth. So Yahweh chose the Hebrew Israelites to be above all nationalities of people on the earth. Yahweh chose the Hebrew Israelites to be above all the people that's walking this earth. There's no confusion here. But the confusion comes from these religions that came up and was made by man. See, Hebrew Israelites need to start following this Bible. See, when Hebrew Israelites follow those religions, they are confused. This is why they are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because they're not following this Bible. But the Bible says Yahweh chose the Hebrew Israelites to be above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. That's what the Bible says. So we're going to continue reading. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 7. Yahweh did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. So Yahweh is establishing through Moses that, hey, I chose the Hebrew Israelites because I have love for the Hebrew Israelites above all the people that walk in the face of the earth. And because in actuality, the Hebrew Israelites was the fewest of all the people, right? The Hebrew Israelites was the fewest amongst all the nations. And Yahweh chose the Hebrew Israelites to be his chosen people. That's Yahweh's choosing, because Yahweh is a God, right? But man and woman on this earth want to question this understanding. You can't question his understanding, because Yahweh chooses what he wants to do. Yahweh is not defined and controlled by a religion. A religion is a controlled concept made up by man. See, Yahweh is the one who is the creator. The creator does what he wants. That's why mankind has developed religion, because they do not agree with the God of this Bible. So this is where the era begins, when man came up with religion. Because religion goes off of feelings and emotions, right? But this Bible go off what the facts are. This Bible goes off with the facts of Yahweh being the God of the Hebrew Israelite, and he chose the Hebrew Israelite to be his chosen people. This is just straight facts that's been known to mankind for years. But religion comes up of jealousy, because the nations who are those Gentile nations are not Yahweh's chosen people. So they have to form their religions, because when they read this Bible is only for the Hebrew Israelites. It's written by the Hebrew Israelites. Yahweh did not ask a Gentile nation to write his Bible. Yahweh elected the Hebrew Israelites to write his words on them scrolls or on these books. Okay? Point blank, period. So let's go to the next verse. This is a continuation. This is a continuation because we read in this Bible in its proper context of Yahweh choosing the Hebrew Israelites to be his people above all nationalities of people that's walking this earth. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 8. But because Yahweh loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, have Yahweh brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. You see this, Israel? Yahweh is establishing that he is the God that loved the Hebrew Israelites. And because he would keep the oath which he has sworn unto your fathers. So Yahweh is establishing through Moses that, hey, I established an oath between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the oath that Yahweh established with the Hebrew Israelite concept, or with the Hebrew concept from Abraham, Isaac to Jacob, which we get into the Israelite. Because Jacob was the forefather of the Hebrew Israelite. But the concept is just establishing that Abraham was a Hebrew, Isaac was a Hebrew. Then you get to Jacob, whose name got changed to Israel, who became the forefather of the Hebrew Israelite. So the oath, or that covenant agreement from Abraham, was passed down from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is the establishment of a relationship that Yahweh is only choosing one nation outside of all the nationalities of people that he created to be his chosen people. This is the establishment in this particular verse in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 8, that Yahweh loved the Hebrew Israelites. Notice Yahweh is not concerned about these Gentile nations that's out here. He's concerned about the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. And this is why he redeemed the Hebrew Israelites out of Egypt, out of bondage from the Pharaoh, who was the Ramses. Okay, who was Ramses? That Pharaoh that had hatred towards the Hebrew Israelites, because he was not a part of Yahweh's chosen people of understanding, because the Pharaoh was an Egyptian, not an Israelite. Moses was an Israelite. That's why Yahweh chose Moses to be a helper to the Hebrew Israelites to redeem them out of bondage. Point blank period. So when we go to the book of Psalms that was written by King David, because King David wrote the book of Psalms, he's establishing the role of understanding about Yahweh. Psalms chapter 105 verse 7. He is Yahweh our Elohim. His judgments are in all the earth. So Yahweh is our Elohim. Our word is what? Possessive. Our is a possessive word. So it says he is Yahweh our Elohim. Not everybody Elohim. It says our Elohim, the Hebrew Israelites Elohim. His judgments are in all the earth, because Yahweh controls the whole earth of understanding. Right? It says his judgments are in all the earth, because Yahweh is responsible for everything that occurs in the earth. Point blank period. Psalms chapter 105 verse 8. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. So you see this? You see this, Israel? It says he hath remembered his covenant forever. There's no stopping his covenant agreement with the children of Israel, because his covenant is forever. That's what the Bible says. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. So 1,000 generation, that's a continuation of understanding of generation being produced in the earth. As you can see. Psalms chapter 105 verse 9. Which covenant he made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac. So as you can see, King David is establishing history, which the covenant that Yahweh made with Abraham, to pass that covenant agreement to Isaac. That's the understanding. And these men were Hebrews, by the way. And let's go to the next understanding. Psalms chapter 105, verse 10. And confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So as you can see, the understanding, the covenant agreement that's established forever, or an everlasting covenant relationship, is with the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank, period. That's the establishment that King David is establishing. So even when we go to the old covenant of understanding and then we get to new covenant, it's still with the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank, period. And confirm the same unto Jacob for a law, because Yahweh gave his law, statutes, and commandments to the Hebrew Israelites. And to Israel for an everlasting covenant, because it says, and confirm the same unto Jacob, meaning Jacob lineage line, okay, or Jacob's descendants, because Jacob's descendants received the laws. And to Israel for an everlasting covenant. So King David had to elaborate that the Hebrew Israelites have an everlasting covenant with the Most High Yah that's never ending. As you can see, the understanding. 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 22 is going to establish that Yahweh chooses what he likes. Okay, so man-made religion tells you what God likes and stuff like that. No. This Bible going to tell you what Yahweh likes out of everything he created. Because Yahweh is a God. He can choose and like what he wants, not what man says. Because man comes up with feelings and emotions and theories and philosophy that's not ordained by the Most High to speak those words. But this is the understanding that Yahweh chooses and does what he wants. 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 22. And again, Ezra is the prophet Ezra from the Old Testament of understanding, elaborating the understanding based upon the vision of understanding that Yahweh gave to Ezra the prophet from the Old Testament. But again, this book called 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 22 is in the book of the Apocrypha. That was in the original King James Version Bible 1611. So again, this is 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 22. And my soul recovered the spirit of understanding, and I began to talk with the Most High again. So now Ezra the prophet, who was one of the top prophets of the Most High, guess what? He's having a conversation with the Most High. That's what it said. And my soul recovered the spirit of understanding, and I began to talk with the Most High again. So Ezra the prophet, or Ezra the prophet, is speaking to the Most High consciously. Okay, in the spirit of understanding, in the consciousness of his mind, he's having a conversation with the Most High Yah. That's the understanding. And also, Ezra the prophet, or Ezra the prophet, was a Hebrew Israelite. And Ezra the prophet was around the time when the Persians were ruling the earth. Okay, that's the understanding. So we go to the book of 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 23. Ezra the prophet is getting to the understanding on Yahweh choosing things that he created to be above certain things he created. So Ezra the prophet is establishing that Yahweh has favorites of his creation. Okay, on different elements that he created on earth. Yahweh has favorite elements of things that he created on earth. As you can see, this understanding. 2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 23. And said, O Yahweh, that bearest rule of every wood of the earth, and of all the trees thereof, thou hast chosen the one only vine. So again, Ezra the prophet is getting to the understanding that Yahweh created all the trees that's on the face of the earth. Ezra is establishing that Yahweh only loved one particular part of a tree on the earth, and that's going to the grapevine. Okay, so yes, Yahweh created a bunch of trees that's on the earth, right? But he likes the grapevine. That's his special tree that he loves. He loves the grapevine. That's the understanding. That's why he says, thou hast chosen thee one only vine. So Yahweh's favorite part of the tree is the grapevine of understanding, or is that vine that produces grapes. Okay, that's the understanding. And we know the grapevine produces wine. As you can see, the understanding. So as you can see, Yahweh is showing the elaboration that he has a choosing of likeness of his choosing. As you can see. 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 24. And of all the lands of the whole world, thou hast chosen thee one pit, and of all the flowers thereof one lily. So it says this again. And of all the lands of the whole world, thou hast chosen thee one pit, and of all the flowers thereof one lily. So it says this again. And of all the lands of the whole world, that means the whole entire earth, thou hast chosen thee one pit. That one pit is going into the land of Israel. So out of all the lands that Yahweh created on earth, Yahweh only loves or prefers the land of Israel above all the lands that he created. That's what the establishment is when it gets into this one pit. And of all the flowers thereof, one lily. So all the plants that Yahweh created, right, getting into those flowers. So all the flowers that Yahweh created on the earth, right, is establishing that Yahweh prefers the lily plant. Yahweh prefers that flower that's a lily. He prefers the lily. Out of all the flowers he created on earth, the lily is his special kind of flower. So it's establishing that Yahweh chooses his favorites out of everything that he created. As you can see, this understanding. See, religion wants to place Yahweh in a box to say that he has to love everything equal. But the God of this Bible chooses what he loves the most and what he doesn't love the most. Okay, this is the understanding. Yahweh has feelings and emotions. As you can see, this understanding. Okay, but religion God, right, in these religions, those gods from those religions doesn't have emotions. Right? Those religion gods only have one emotion. Right? They love everything. And those guys love everything. Those are the religion version of gods. But this God that's real has a liking and a disliking towards things. Right? Even though he created these things. So we get the understanding on Yahweh's personality of choosing his certain liking. Okay? Of things that he created on earth. So again, Yahweh chose the land of Israel to be his favorite part of the land on the whole earth or the whole world. And it says, and all the flowers thereof, Yahweh prefers a lily flower. Okay, his lily flower he prefers above all the other flowers that he created on this earth. 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 25. It says this, and of all the depths of the sea, thou hast filled thee one river, and of all builded cities thou hast hollowed Zion unto thyself. So you see this in the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 25. And of all the depths of the sea thou hast filled thee one river. So the one river out of all the oceans, the seas, the body of water that Yahweh created on this earth, guess what? Yahweh prefers one river. And that one river is the Jordan River. Okay, the Jordan River is the river that Yahweh prefers. Above all the different waters that he created on earth, Yahweh prefers the Jordan River to be his special river. And of all builded cities, thou hast hollowed Zion unto thyself. So where it says Zion, is talking about that city that's in Israel that's been referred to as Zion. Okay, Zion is that city that's in Jerusalem, right? That Yahweh prefers above all the builded cities that's on the face of the earth. Because there's many cities that's created that's on this earth, but Yahweh prefers Zion to be that holy city of his choosing, of being the one that he loves the most. Okay, that's what it's establishing. And notice Yahweh didn't say anything about the city of Mecca, right? Notice Yahweh didn't say nothing about Saudi Arabia location as being his location of loving anything about Saudi Arabia. Notice his center of attention is what? Israel. Okay? And also the city Zion. That is Yahweh's concern. Mankind comes up with the understanding of America being Yahweh's, centerpiece of attention. Or also mankind comes up to say Saudi Arabia is Yahweh's center of attention, right? No. The Bible said Israel and also the city of Zion is Yahweh's concern of his preference of loving those areas more than the other areas that's created on earth. Point blank period. 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 26. And of all the fowls that are created, thou hast named thee one dove. And of all the cattle that are made, thou hast provided thee one sheep. You see this, Israel? So it says, and of all the fowls that are created, thou hast named thee one dove. So basically, out of all the birds Yahweh created, so Yahweh chooses the dove to be his special type of bird compared to the other fowls or the other birds that he created on earth. Yahweh prefers the dove above all the other fowls of the earth. And of all the cattle that are made, thou hast provided thee one sheep. So Yahweh prefers and loves the sheep more than all the other cattle that he created on earth. So Yahweh has a favorite of his creations, as you can see. He's establishing by basically talking with Ezra the prophet to say, hey, I like the dove more than the other fowls that I created. I prefer a dove over all the other birds. Or also saying that out of all the cattle that I created, I prefer a sheep over all the other cattle that I created. These are my basically favorite part of my creation from these particular animals. Okay, this is the understanding. 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 27. And among all the multitudes of the people, thou hast gotten thee one people, and unto this people whom thou lovest, thou gavest a law that is approved of all. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So again, Ezra the prophet is having a conversation with Yahweh. And Yahweh is establishing with Ezra the prophet, establishing that yes, Yahweh created all peoples that's on the face of the earth. But Yahweh is specifically only dealing with one group of people. And that basically is the Hebrew Israelites, which we established earlier. Unto this people, talking about this people, the Hebrew Israelites, whom thou lovest, which we are to prove in the book of Deuteronomy, right? We proved that understanding in the book of Deuteronomy that Yahweh loves the Hebrew Israelites. When we go to Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 8, but because Yahweh loved you, that's talking about because Yahweh loved the Hebrew Israelites, right? That's the understanding. This is the understanding that Ezra the prophet is bringing out because the Most High Yah is having a conversation with Ezra the prophet on this matter, on whom Yahweh chooses to love. As you can see, Yahweh did not change his love from the book of Deuteronomy to all we get to the book of Ezra. As you can see, Yahweh is consistent in saying he still loved the Hebrew Israelites. There's no changing in his love for the Hebrew Israelites. Whom thou lovest, thou gavest a law that is approved of all, because Yahweh gave his law, statutes, and commandments to the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. Which we already established that understanding in the book of Psalms chapter 105 verse 10. That Yahweh gave his law to the descendants of Jacob, which we read in the book of Psalms chapter 105 verse 10, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. We just read this understanding in the book of Psalms. King David broke down his understanding in the book of Psalms. Now we're reading that's Now we're reading this history about the children of Israel given the understanding of his laws, right? We're reading this understanding all the way in the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 27. As you can see, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. All the prophets are saying the same thing. As you can see, this is how you rightly divide the word of truth. Point blank, period. This is a cut to you religions and also you Christian faith and the people that's in the Islamic religion as well. This is a cut unto you. We're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. Yahweh is specifically telling Ezra the prophet that, hey, I only love the Hebrew Israelites above all the people that I made on the earth. And this is Yahweh personally having a conversation with Ezra the prophet on. Point blank, period. Because again, 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 22 is getting to understanding who Ezra the prophet or who Ezra the prophet is having a conversation with. Ezra the prophet is having a conversation with the Most High Yah. As you can see, and I began to talk with the Most High again. So Ezra the prophet is having a conversation personally with Yahweh. And Yahweh is telling him, hey, this is the things I like over everything that I created. So Ezra the prophet is confirming the understanding, and this is why he wrote this stuff down. So there should be no confusion going forward on who Yahweh is the God for. He's telling Ezra the prophet that he's the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Psalms chapter 105 verse 6 is going to prove the understanding that the Hebrew Israelites are Yahweh's chosen people. Psalms chapter 105 verse 6. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen, his chosen. So you see this, Israel? Ye children of Jacob is Yahweh's chosen people. Right? So which elaborates specifically on who Yahweh's people are, specifically. In the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 5 verse 27. Unto this people, or thou hast gotten thee one people. So the one people is getting to the children of Jacob, the children of Israel, his chosen. King David brought out this understanding. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children. So it's explaining from that lineage line, from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. That's the understanding that Yahweh is dealing with the Hebrew Israelites. From that seed line of Abraham. It didn't say from Abraham to Ishmael. It didn't say that, did it? It said from Abraham to Isaac and to Jacob. Okay, because you don't get to Jacob through Ishmael. You get to Jacob through Isaac. Because Abraham was the father of Isaac. So you have Abraham, Isaac, and Isaac is the father of Jacob. So it says from Abraham, O ye seed of Abraham, and then it goes to ye children of Jacob, his chosen. So it specifies that covenant agreement going from Abraham to Jacob. As you can see, the understanding. As you can see, there's no sign of Ishmael being mentioned in this understanding. There's no sign of Ishmael. There's no sign of anything dealing with Muslim stuff in this understanding. This is all Hebrew Israelite understanding. This is a Hebrew Israelite custom. This is a Hebrew understanding from Abraham to Jacob. This is a Hebrew Israelite thing. Not a Muslim thing. This is a Hebrew thing. Malachi chapter 3 verse 6. This is to prove that Yahweh does not change from his covenant agreement. This is the proof that Yahweh does not change on how he feels, on what he believes. He stands firm in what he believes. Once he put the spirit on the prophets to write his word, that's just what it is. Malachi chapter 3 verse 6. For I am Yahweh, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. As you can see, Yahweh said, I change not. But these religions change the Most High's perspective to basically form on what they believe God is. But Yahweh say, I change not. He brings the truth through the prophets. For I am Yahweh, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Because the children of Jacob Even though in general, children of Israel be going off into full-blown sin, right? But guess what? Yahweh is not going to fully destroy all the Hebrew Israelites. That's what it's establishing. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed, because Yahweh still has love for the Hebrew Israelites. Even though, yes, you had the majority of Hebrew Israelites going off into sin, right? But Yahweh still establishing his covenant agreement with the Hebrew Israelites. So no man, no woman is going to deter Yahweh from loving the children of Israel only, preferred above all the nationalities on the face of the earth. This is the confirmation. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed. So the sons of Jacob, or the descendants of Jacob, are still here on earth, and they are still Yahweh's chosen people, regardless. So ain't no religion is going to tell me that Yahweh's chosen people are not the Israelites no more. That's a lie. Yahweh is confirming through the prophet Malachi that he does not change. That's why it says, for I am Yahweh, I change not. Yahweh speaking through the prophet Malachi. Yahweh is letting it be known to you Hebrew Israelites. Yahweh is letting it be known to, of course, down the road, years later, to these Gentile nations, that he doesn't change. He does not change his love from the Hebrew Israelites. His love for the Hebrew Israelites is still consistent. Point blank, period. No matter what these Gentile nations are saying, no matter what these Hebrew Israelites saying that's in these religions. Yahweh of this Bible say he's the God of the Hebrew Israelites. He does not change. His covenant agreement has not changed. Okay, point blank, period. Jeremiah 17 verse 7. Blessed is the man that trusteth in Yahweh, and whose hope Yahweh is. So again, it says, blessed is the man that trusted in Yahweh. So you Hebrew Israelites, right, when you abide by the rules of the prophets, right, because Jeremiah was a prophet of the Most High, and Yahweh speaking through the prophet Jeremiah to give him this understanding. Blessed is the man that trusteth in Yahweh. So you become blessed people, you children of Israel, when you put your trust in Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right, who hope Yahweh is. So you put your trust in the black God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you shall be blessed. You should be protected by the Most High Yah. Because you put your trust in this Bible. Because Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites in this holy Bible. You see this? This is why we have to put our trust in this Bible, because we're going to become blessed. Notice it didn't say you're going to become blessed by paying your tithes and offering 10% of your money to them Sunday worship churches. It didn't say that, did it? See, that's what religion tells you, you children of Israel, that you're going to be blessed because you gave your money to those Christian churches. But that's a lie. The Bible says you're going to become blessed when you put your trust in Yahweh. And this right here is in all the Bibles. You're supposed to put your trust in Yahweh. Point blank, period. Jeremiah 17 verse 5. Thus saith Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departed from Yahweh. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? You see this? It says, thus saith Yahweh, who's speaking through Jeremiah the prophet, cursed be the man that trusteth in man. That's going into those religions. That's going into follow man philosophy that's outside this Bible. You bring curses to yourself, you children of Israel, by following those stupid religions that's not ordained by the Most High. Those things are ordained by man. Because Yahweh deal with truth. Yahweh deal with righteousness. Those religions are not righteousness. So this is why you Hebrew Israelites are going through those problems. This is why you Hebrew Israelites are being locked up in them jail cells. This is why you Hebrew Israelites are going through trial and tribulations, right? Getting murdered. bad things happening to you. Divorce rate at an all-time high. Your women don't know how to be righteous women because they dressing immodestly. Right? This is why you are destroyed for lack of knowledge, you Hebrew Israelites, because you put your trust in man. You put your trust in man that's not ordained to teach Yahweh's word. See, you put your trust in philosophy. So you Hebrew Israelites, you put your trust in your lust. You put your trust in these lustful things of the world, understanding. You put your trust in money. You put your trust in wickedness. Right? This is why you curse as a people, you children of Israel. And it said, and make of flesh his arm. So this flesh is symbolic for those religions. And it says, whose heart departed from Yahweh, because Yahweh does not deal with those religions. Yahweh does not deal with the philosophy of man. Yahweh only deals with his commandments and his laws and ordinances that he passed down to the children of Israel throughout their generation. This is how you get back on track, you Hebrew Israelite. You must come back to the Father by what? Keeping his law, statutes, and commandments. Because if you don't, you bring curses to yourself, you children of Israel, by you not putting your trust in Yahweh. Because we just established that you become blessed when you put your trust in Yahweh, the God of this Bible. Point blank period. In the book of Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 7, it proves that we have to put our trust in Yahweh. So now we go to the book of Baruch chapter 4 verse 1. And Baruch was another prophet of the Most High Yah, right? He was a prophet, right? Who worked under, of course, in general, the prophet Jeremiah. Okay? Jeremiah the prophet was the one that taught the prophet Baruch to understand as well. Because Baruch was a student of Jeremiah the prophet. Okay, so we go to the book of Baruch, chapter 4, verse 1 to get the understanding. So the book of Baruch is in the book of the Apocrypha. The book of Baruch, chapter 4, verse 1. This is the book of the commandments of Elohim and the law that endure forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. You see this, Israel? It says this again. This is the book of the commandments of Elohim and the law that endure forever. So this Bible is all about Yahweh's commandments. These laws, statutes, and commandments endure forever. Contrary to what those religions are talking about. Those religions are not going to endure forever. Those religions on this earth are temporary. Because when Yahshua the Mashiach kingdom gets established on earth, Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments are going to be pushed off in full effect on this earth. Okay? Because all nations are going to have to bend to Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments. But this point, I'm just want to elaborate that Yahweh's commandments are forever. Okay? This is the book of the commandments of Elohim and the law that endure forever. Because again, this Bible was a book that was supposed to be here for the children of Israel to learn about Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. It didn't say that this is the book of Christian faith. It didn't say this is the book of Islamic faith. It didn't say this is the book of all nationalities can get the understanding. It said this is the book of the commandments of the Most High, or the book of the commandments of Elohim, and the law that endure forever. Because the law, statutes, and commandments were given to the Hebrew Israelites. All they that keep it shall come to life. You Hebrew Israelites are going to come to the right understanding on how to live when you apply the commandments of God, when you apply the commandments of Yahweh. But such as leave it shall die. This is why the crime rate is high. This is why black on black crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime is at all-time high. Native Indian on Native Indian crime is at all-time high, because y'all refuse to keep the commandments of the Most High. That's why it says, but such as leave, it shall die. When you leave these commandments, you die in sin, or you die in ignorance. Okay? You're not spiritually awakened. You're still spiritually asleep. Because you have not awakened to the truth that you are Yahweh's chosen people, you Hebrew Israelite. And you must keep these commandments. That's how you gain everlasting life. That's how you gain living. This is the warning to you Hebrew Israelites. You must keep the commandments of the Most High. That's what the prophet Baruch is saying. Baruch chapter 4 verse 2 is going to specify that the understanding of keeping Yahweh's commandments was towards primarily the Hebrew Israelites in this context. Baruch chapter 4 verse 2. Turn thee, O Jacob, and take hold of it, walk in the presence of the light thereof, that thou mayest be illuminated. So you see this, Israel? It says, turn thee, O Jacob. The prophet Baruch is talking to the Hebrew Israelites, telling the Hebrew Israelites, turn thee, O Jacob, and take hold of it. Talking about take hold of the commandments. Follow the commandments. Walk in the commandments. Walk in the presence of the light thereof. Talking about walk in the presence of these commandments thereof, that thou mayest be illuminated, that your light shall be shined amongst the world. Your righteousness will be shown to the nations when you apply what's written in this book, because you are the Yahweh's chosen people. So, as you can see, the prophet Baruch's concern was the Hebrew Israelite to walk in these commandments. Psalms chapter 111 verse 10 is going to get an understanding on what Baruch was saying in Baruch chapter 4 verse 2, where it says that thou mayest be illuminated, that thou mayest be walking in righteousness with a bright light based upon your understanding of increasing your knowledge of wisdom based upon you following the commandments. That's what's going to make you to be illuminated. Meaning you have the right understanding about Yahweh's righteousness because you're walking in the presence of the light thereof, and this light is getting into those commandments. Which Psalms chapter 111 verse 10 is going to elaborate. When you apply the commandments of the Most High, you begin to have wisdom. Psalms chapter 111 verse 10. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. So you see this, Israel? So it says the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His commandments. That's the key point. Right? That's what the commandments is getting into, where it says, Baruch chapter 4 verse 2, walk in the presence of the light thereof. It's talking about walk in the presence of the commandments thereof, that thou mayest be illuminated, that thou mayest be wise, or that thou mayest be in the right light of understanding, that thou mayest have wisdom. That's what it's getting into. Okay? Because you go back to the previous verse, it says, Baruch chapter 4 verse 1, this is the book of the commandments of Elohim, and the law that endure forever. All they that keep it shall come to life. You're going to have wisdom. You're going to have the right understanding. You're going to know how to live right. But such as leave it shall die, meaning you're not going to have the wisdom to live long. Your life is going to be cut short. So when you look at our people, the blacks, Hispanic, Native Indians, right, and our people scattered abroad that do not apply what's written in this book by keeping in Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments, guess what? We see a lot of our people, life get cut short. A lot of our people don't live long. They live short. Why? Because they're not applying what's written in this Bible. They're not applying the commandments. So they bring curses upon themselves. That's why the prophets always recommended the children of Israel keep the commandments of the Most High, so they will have a longer lifespan. Okay, when you look at certain celebrities, they're not applying the laws of God. So what happened? Their life get cut short. Right? You look at certain people that be in the street life mentality. Their life get cut short because they're not about this truth and the right understanding. Okay? They're not applying the commandments. When you look at the religious leaders of our nation, their life got cut short because they're not applying the commandments of the Most High. See, these are just warnings for our people to know about, that you must apply the commandments of the Most High to have a longer lifespan on earth. Okay, or to have a longer understanding of wisdom to elevate your understanding versus you being spiritually dead as a people. As you can see, the understanding. Okay? As you can see, the understanding that Yahweh's laws is forever. Okay? His statutes and commandments is forever. As you can see, the understanding. It's not stopping. Contrary to what these religions are talking about. So as you can see, we go back to the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 16. This proves that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Biblical proof. So as you can see, Israel, this is just the part 1 lesson of this understanding of Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Biblical proof. So other than that, Israel, stay tuned for more videos on this channel on Kingdom Builders of Israel LC YouTube channel. Other than that, Israel, shalom.